first off, I know the biggest question on everyone's mind, Frank Vogel and Deandre Ayton, what is that going to look like? And how is that approach going to be handled? So here's what he had to say.
We've had some good talks, and we're off to a strong start. And in terms of, hoping to create a role that he feels better about, because if he feels better about his offensive role and involvement, I've learned in part, that throughout the years of coaching bigs that, if they're feeling good about, their involvement on the offensive end, they'll run through a wall on the defensive end. And if we want Deandre to dominate defensively, which we do, involving him more and making sure that he feels comfortable on the offensive side of the ball, is a big way to get the most out of him defensively.
So does this make you feel good about the future of what Frank Vogel and Deandre Ayton's relationship could be like?
Very much so. Listen, at least he called him in the offseason. That's step one. I'm happy with that. And listen, I think from everything we've heard about Frank Vogel, he knows how to talk to players. He knows how to try and foster relationships with them. And more importantly, and I think this is where it's going to be very vital for DA, is that I think DA wanted a voice that was going to at least hear him out and at least make you feel like there's a process by which we're going to go about this, and your thoughts and your ideas and your feelings will be acknowledged within that process. And I think everybody wants that in their workplace. So I'm happy with what I heard from Vogel, and I'm not surprised.
Well, and he talks about, how figuring out the role on offense, solidifying those things for DA can lead to unlocking him again on the defensive end. And everything we heard was he wasn't sure about his role on the offense. What was it supposed to be? Poor communication with Monty. Look, I'm 60-40 that Frank Vogel can unlock DA, and a simple change in the coaching staff can make all the difference for him. But to me, I remembered back when I was at the Suns, I was the manager of like 7 people in our digital department, right? And we had to take these personality quizzes, and each manager got kind of a write-up about what personalities his or her employees had and the best ways to kind of deal with them. And I started thinking about this because Vogel seems like a really good manager of people, right?
Mm-hmm.
That seems like one of the biggest strengths. So I found the quiz that we took and found basically what DA aligns with. And it's called the console. And I aligned it to the Office characters so you can enjoy this a little bit. He's a Phyllis Vance. All right.
Oh.
So Console spreads cheerfulness and positive energy. They love to help people and spend time with them. Biggest challenges is coming to grips with their sensitivity. What motivates them? Above all, these type of personality types want to be wanted and needed. Mm-hmm. How to work with them? Make an extra effort to acknowledge their efforts and achievements and clearly define their role and responsibility. That's what Frank Vogel's talking about here. Is he understands that Deandre Ayton is, for lack of a better term, a sensitive soul. He's a guy that's a people person that wants to be recognized for what he's doing and wants to have the positive reinforcement to go along with it. And I think he's lacked that, like we've talked about. And I think Frank Vogel seems to understand that there are different type of people and different type of approaches. And I like that about him, because if this is the way, and I feel pretty confident that Deandre Ayton operates, right, then you have to understand how to get the most out of him. And Frank Vogel, whether it's coach speak or not, nailed the answer on how to approach a guy like that.
I mean, the Goon says it best. Vogel made Roy Hibbert look like he belonged in the NBA. That's effing magic. And it is true, because Roy Hibbert didn't do shit after Vogel left.
By the way, the Phyllis comp was for DA, not Frank Vogel, if anybody's confused.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yep, Hayden, get it right.
That was very well put. I thought that's very apt. So I think listen, we could pretend that we know what DA is all about. Some of us have talked to him, at length here and there. We've seen him act behind the scenes. We've seen him deal with his teammates. So there's one aspect that we do have, and I know, Lindsey, you were around DA for 2 years? So you got to see more of him. I was around him down at the U of A a lot more. Like I feel like I have a pretty good sense of what he is off the court and in the locker room. It's just on the court. When you have the stress and the dynamics of, one ball between 5 guys and whose role is what. Like, it gets complex, and it can get very, very intense. And when you have guys like Chris Paul, Devin Booker, and Monty Williams, all very intense individuals, it can be a lot. It could just be a lot. And I'm not going to say that that's the total excuse. We all know it's not, but it can be a lot. And so that's all I'll leave that.
And I think the thing is that with Frank Vogel, because he elaborated more and talked about some of the challenges and the ways to go about doing all of the things that he has set out to do, is just that, it's not necessarily about being what he specifically said is that there has to be a firmness, there has to be directness to it, but that shouldn't impact the belief that you show in a player. Yeah. So you can have a firm hand, you can have a real discussion, man to man, quote unquote, if you want to say it like that, but he's still going to make sure that you know that he believes in you, that he feels like that he wants to make sure you feel valued in what you bring to the table. That we might have to work together to improve in areas, but that doesn't mean that I think you're worthless or not good enough or whatever it may be. And I'm not saying that anybody else did that to DA, but it could have felt like that to DA. And that's where a lot of the disconnect could have been.
I just hate this sense of everything, the machismo. Like, oh, he can't have any feel. He can't be sensitive. He can't be jovial. Like, that's bullshit, because human beings are human beings. Everybody operates in different ways. And just because somebody may need a little bit more of, hey, good work on that, maybe we should try to work on this as well, and that's the approach they take, doesn't mean it's coddling, doesn't mean he's a sissy, doesn't mean any of those kind of things that get thrown out. It means that you have to be smart in the way you approach people. And there is no one size fits all.
Amen to that. Listen, we'll even take it a little bit behind the curtain here. Like, this is the first time I've been around individuals and worked with individuals, like as many as we have, of people that were 26 and under, right? It's not the same as when I was dealing with other people that were my similar age and how we brought up. So it's a little bit different. Like, there was far more aggressiveness in terms of direct contact and communication when I was younger in the military and all this other stuff than it is now. And I deal with that with my kids as well. Like, they just communicate in a different way. That doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just different. And you have to understand that everybody has a different style by which they want to be spoken to. And if you think you're going to one size fits all everybody on your team, I guess what? Shit like what we've seen the last 2 years is going to happen. You're going to have blow-ups. You're going to have things that happen time after time that you're just not prepared for, because you don't understand that you have to adjust your communication style with every single person. And it can be taxing, but that's your fucking job as a coach. It's your job to figure it out. And if you can't figure it out, you need to move the fuck on.
Well, who's the greatest coach of all time?
Me. Oh, I'm sorry.
in the NBA. Most people view Phil Jackson.
I would say Pop.
Pop and Phil Jackson probably up there, right?
Yeah.
Phil Jackson, notorious for handling each of his guys differently. At the beginning of the year, he'd give each guy a book that he specifically thought spoke to their personality and the way they operated. Did it with the Lakers and the Bulls. Pop treats guys differently. You really think Phil Jackson could have treated Michael Jordan the same way he treated Dennis Rodman, the same way he treated Steve Kerr? Yeah. Hell no. It doesn't work like that. It just does not work like that. And you don't get the most out of guys unless you understand that.
If Monty Williams was coaching that Bulls team, Dennis Rodman would have never played. And then they would have never won championships at the level that they did. That's what we're talking about. You have to adjust. Sometimes you just got to give a guy a few days. Sometimes you just got to let off the gas. Sometimes you got to come from a different angle. It's just the nature of the business. It's just the nature of people.
It is. It's just people. Also, hello in the chat says, I just don't understand how if he could go down 1 year, why can't he go back up? I mean, you're not wrong.
Not wrong at all.
It's definitely a possibility, and we should be speaking it into existence. Also, we got a super chat from Humble Rumble. Thank you, Humble Rumble. Said, Monty Williams and Chris Paul are gone. The Suns got better.
Yes, they did.
They at least got different.
Yeah, at the very least, they got different and will likely be able to play a little bit faster, which I think could also benefit a lot of guys on this team. But here's the thing, Espo, to your point about being allowed to be a human being and being allowed to have fun while you're working. That is something that Frank Vogel also cares very much about. He has worked very hard to create a culture that, you know, puts in the work, but also has a little bit of levity to it as well, and finds way to have a little bit of fun and a little bit of a work-life balance as well. Emma, play the video.
We make sure that we're, you know, the hardest working staff in the league, but that we also have a work-life balance, that we also make sure that we're laughing and having fun throughout the journey. You know, that's a big piece for me, is the levity piece, whether it's in practice on the floor or in our coaching staff meetings and our team film meetings. You know, those are important pieces to me. And, you know, the fact that guys want to come back and realign with me means a lot, but it speaks to the culture that I try to set.
Did anybody check Emma's pulse? Is Emma right over there?
She's back. She's good now. But like this, you know, it speaks to this. Like this is obviously a lot of talk around the coaching staff, which I think you can say speaks volumes for Frank Vogel, that a lot of guys who he had worked with in the past, even though he took a year off of the NBA, wanted to come back and wanted to be reconnected with him and be a part of his squad again. And you can say, well, of course, who wouldn't accept a job like that? You still want to have to actually enjoy your job, and they wouldn't be coming here if they didn't enjoy it to some extent.
Well, most of them had jobs. He didn't go out to a bunch of unemployed guys and be like, hey, you want a job? He went to guys that had other coaching jobs, some with the Lakers, multiple other places, and said, hey, I'm building something. You want to come back and work with me, or you want to come work with me for the first time? And these guys didn't hesitate. He put together a whole staff in 2 weeks, basically, that is one of the better staffs in the NBA, one of the deepest staffs in the NBA. So I like the approach that speaks volumes to why guys want to come back and play with them. And I think that could really help the Suns overall. I mean, they were a team that when they were best, they were having fun, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were guys that, you know, they had Chris Paul was always locked in, but the group around them were guys that understood this is something we should enjoy the journey too. And I think Frank Vogel gets that, but he also understands there's a time when you lock in. It's done with fun and games, and let's be serious and get the job done. And that's the right balance you got to have.